Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the session of Coffee with Callbi. We've had two very interesting questions pop up. The first one deals with sentiment analysis, and it's become a bit of a hot topic wherever we read up about speech analytics. Up pops the subject of sentiment analysis. And how do we use that in an operational environment? So I'm going to ask Corey to come in here. Now, Corey's had 10 years, maybe 15 years of speech analytics experience working with some of the big international brand software. We're not going to mention specific brands today, but Corey, why don't you come in and just give us a brief overview of where sentiment analysis has been for the last, let's say, 5 years. Over to you, Corey.
That's a great question. Thanks, Rod. And from my side, good morning to the participants. It's great always to chat around what is our passion. So sentiment analysis is an interesting one, Rod, because the international players make a big thing around, it's machine learning and it's AI, and it seems to be this magic bullet. And in short, sentiment analysis is based on tone, pitch, and volume of voice. And sometimes I'll overlay it with some negative words, but they typically regionalize. So if it's an American product, American words. The challenge in South Africa, however, is it's cultural for certain cultures to speak louder, speak faster than others. And obviously our negative sentiment words are different. So the sentiment engines are not accurate. It's a coin toss, and I'll share our own experience in a minute. So typically they either get it or they don't get it, and it's like a 50-50 chance. So what Callbi decided to do right from day one is we've got a natural language processor as part of our stack. And, I flippantly say it, but it is more truth than flippant, is we dust it off every couple of months and we compare it against what we've termed our sentiment query. So as part of Callbi, we built a extensive negative sentiment query that looks at localized negative sentiment words like frustrated, I'm unhappy, I'm dissatisfied, I'm pissed off, a clear up, and all of those in all of the vernacular languages. And from a query perspective, we typically can get a 90% plus query accuracy compared to a 50% odd query sentiment engine accuracy rate. So a 40% lift on our query alone. And for us, that is, in the South African context, most likely the best approach. It is different as we expand internationally, where, for instance, in the UK, they have a very monotone style of speaking. They're very evenly, and if he raises his voice just ever so slightly, that means he's incredibly upset. And sentiment engines tend to work better in cultures like that. But in the South African context, the way we're doing it to identify negative sentiment words or high-risk words is by far the most accurate that we've seen and that we can achieve.
Okay, Corey, nice. Thanks for that input. Henriette, before we actually show our participants how we actually set up Callbi, won't you, just your experience in contact centers, contact center management space as a quality specialist, as a performance specialist in contact centers, won't you just talk about how sentiment analysis is used in the context of driving performance improvement or behavior changes? So, Henriette, floor's yours for a few moments.
Perfect. Thank you, Rod. And morning, everyone. And it's nice to see all the familiar names. Can't say faces, but the names at least. Thanks for tuning in. Sentiment analysis is very important. And the reason why you need to measure is your sentiment is an indication of what your customer is feeling and saying. All of us are in the business. We are in call center. It's our core function. We're here to either service or sell or collect. We deal with our customers. Now, out there, your sentiment is an indication of, is your customer happy? Is your customer going to go somewhere else? Word of mouth. We all know by now, word of mouth is your most powerful marketing that you get out there. You want to know what is being said. How is my customer feeling? Because that will drive initiatives I need to run, certain things I need to do, process changes. Is my customer happy with what I'm doing? Is the competitor doing better than me? So that's why sentiment, if we don't worry about what the customer says, we actually shouldn't even be here. The people we deal with, we are here to serve the person on the other side of the line. And that's why we need to do sentiment and understand what they say.
Excellent. Thanks, Henriette. And in fact, it brings to mind that, for the last, 20 years in call centers, we've spoken about the voice of the customer, the voice of the customer programs, etc. But my observation is it's only now with practical low-cost speech analytics that we're actually able to listen to the voice of the customer.
Yes.
Now, in your opinion, should a sentiment analysis query be run against every single call?
Yeah, that's the easy question, Rod. 100% yes. So talk traditional voice of the customer, we talk surveys. There's a decision, either you send the survey or not. Very random based, chances are you're not going to get all the feedback that you are looking for. In Callbi, and I'll demonstrate after this, what we say and what Corey also alluded to and said what we do within Callbi is when we talk sentiment analysis, we are actually looking for the expression of a negative sentiment word. Now, and I talk from personal experience. I work in call centers, but I've also phoned lots of call centers where I have had calls where I've expressed sentiment, where I've said, this is ridiculous. I wish someone can just phone me back. Can you just resolve my issue? Now, I don't get a survey afterwards. I can't tell someone, please phone me, I've got an issue. If you now pick up on 100% of your conversations at a click of a button, you can highlight any conversation where any one of these words jump up. And it's quick, and I'll demonstrate the process, where anyone can then just click in, do the spot in the call, and assess if there's an issue that needs to be addressed. For me, and again, I want to speak of personal experience, the times that I phoned in a call center where I was really upset and really just wishing someone can resolve my issue, if I had a call back within 20 minutes after that or within the day, they would have kept me as a customer. And that's why it's important to tap into that.
Excellent. Corey, do you want to add anything at this point in time? You said you've had many, many years of working with some of the technologies that have purported to have sentiment analysis. Have you got something to add?
Outside of, I think Henriette's spot on is you want to listen to, and I say listen to in inverted commas, every call for those negative sentiment words, because as times are getting tougher, customers become more important, and you want to be able to reach back to them saying you had a frustration, let's understand that frustration. But the other point is also where you flag calls for negative sentiment is to understand what the sentiment is. And within something like Callbi, it's so easy to drop into the exact point in the conversation, what I term targeted listening, seeing where the negative sentiment word was used, and listen to that sort of 2-3 minutes or 1 minute of conversation to understand what the negative sentiment is about. It might be a fundamental process issue which you could address and take action on. It might be a product defect, or it might be just a genuinely dissatisfied client. But the ability to then understand what the negative sentiment context is invaluable, because then you can take action on that. So yeah, to echo what you said earlier, it's absolutely essential in every contact center to listen to these negative sentiment context and understand what it is to see how you address it.
Excellent. Back to you, Henriette. We've only talked about negative sentiment, which is interesting. But surely the converse of positive sentiment is equally important. Henriette, your view from an operational point of view.
Rod, you're right. We mostly always focus on the negative, but it is important to also look at the positive. And it is just as possible to build queries that looks for the expression of positive words and positive sentiment. Very much so. And again, and a lot of times when I think positive sentiment, it's important to look for that also from an agent perspective. Recognizing agents where you hear compliments, hear positive sentiment, but also using that back to the customer feedback, saying thank you, thanks for loyalty, and also informing your processes where you're getting good feedback, certain products are working, certain processes are working, we need to continue with that. So yes, you're 100% right. We shouldn't forget the positive sentiment is just as important.
Right. And as you said, the agent motivation, reinforcing their incredibly valuable role that they play in our relationship with customers. Henriette, I think most of the people on the call today are users, Callbi users. But in the event that we do have other people, and the recordings will be circulated as well, Would you just please go into how we set up a query to identify both positive and negative sentiments? And I'm sure you'll also show how we have some pre-built queries in that space. So I think the floor is yours, and over to you.
Thank you, Rod. I'm sharing my screen, so if you can just confirm that you can see it.
Confirmed.
Perfect stuff. So yes, everybody currently on the call has seen Callbi. You are existing users right now. Maybe some of you have not yet seen the query stack. I am definitely going to show you the existing query. Remember that it's yours to build out, to customize as you wish. So quickly, just when we are looking negative sentiment, and I want to show you the existing negative sentiment. Remember, under queries, if you click the plus sign, from here under the CX, there's a template that you can go have a look at already existing that looks at negative sentiment. There's also one that looks at threat of taking action, which is a bit more serious, where a person would start threatening with complaints, ombudsman, things like those. But I want to show you negative sentiment so we can select that specific query. And like we've mentioned, this looks at the expression of certain negative words. And this is where the fun comes in, because you can now go sit and you can brainstorm and you can think about what are the different things that someone will say that would indicate that they are upset or there is negative sentiment. This query is not done. You can add as you go along. So you can see, for instance, here, I'm not happy. You better sort this out. There's something else in here that ridiculous. They've actually found that if a client mentions the word ridiculous, the chance that they will churn in the next 6 months is almost 80%. So look at these words, think about the different things. We've picked up, for instance, in some of our calls, and that's how we also learn, the word apparently. A client that says apparently is an indication of negative sentiment or upsetness. So you build your query, you build those words to flag these words in your conversation, and you will then save your query. Obviously,
and
there's
Henriette,
the
just to
accurate.
cut
Yes,
in
Rod.
here, I see
Yes.
you've also in your query stack there, you've put in the vernacular equivalents.
Yes.
So one would build them into your negative or positive sentiment query.
Yes, 100% so. 100%. There is, I almost think, a positive sentiment query as well. We'll go have a look now. But yes, you add all your different vernacular languages into that one. You can also specify, remember, that am I looking for anyone saying it? Only my client, only my agent. So you can go set the parameters. Like I said, the query is yours to play with. Once you've then gone through your accuracy, the one thing I want to mention, because everybody, when you start working with query accuracy, remember on a query like this, when we're talking negative sentiment, there is a chance that you will get false flags. The aim here is to pick up on any potential sentiment. And I want to show you the process then and what you will do. You'll save your query. I already have a pre-saved query, just to show you quickly. So we do have a query already saved. Once you've got your query, the process I suggest is that you then build a dashboard, so calls to be checked. And in that specific dashboard, you pull up a list of calls, potential negative sentiment. Now you only do this once, you build your query once, and you then set this dashboard card to show you as your calls are loaded and processed to flag any call that contains potential negative sentiment. What you end up with is a list that keeps populating every day. Now remember, in the current demo instance, this is already 180 calls, 11 calls that get flagged. Now in your bigger environments, we can talk millions of calls that you might end up with a list of 20 calls. Much quicker. Somebody just needs to go click. It will click through to the spot in the call with the word built in. The person who checks only just needs to decide, is it real negative sentiment? You attach your tag. Either you say negative sentiment confirmed or not confirmed. I quickly want to show you, let's check one more. Let's quickly check one call, and see how quick it is. We go straight to the spot. You are wasting my time. Yes, negative sentiment. Negative sentiment confirmed. This is then the process that someone will go through once a day, check the calls. You can then end up with one dashboard card. And let's just edit this. Negative sentiment confirmed. Because remember, your aim is to check all of this because you want to decide, what do I need to do? You can then build the card, but filter it to show all your calls that you've now checked and confirmed that there was negative sentiment. And this then becomes your card for business decisions, for action, for coaching, for phoning the customer back. But that's how quick and easy it is to get through to that actual spot. Right, back to you.
Thank you, Henriette. That's sweet and to the point. And I would assume then we could do exactly the same thing for positive sentiment.
Yes.
Where a supervisor or a team leader might want to be able to compliment an agent on a positive sentiment call. Back to you, Henriette.
Thanks, Rod. That's actually what I wanted to check. Let's quickly see currently, and if it's not yet in the library, we'll just add it. I do have it alongside in my Excel queries that I'm busy adding on into the library. But under CX, let's go check. There is a positive sentiment. It will work exactly the same. So look, we're looking for words like happy, lovely, special, friendly. And again, it's about thinking what are the rest of the words that you want to add, build it into your query, and it will work exactly the same way.
Excellent. I think also to put it into context now, and this maybe is a question for Corey, it's how soon after the event would a team leader, supervisor, QA person actually have this information to work with? Corey?
Currently, Rod, the clients can upload every hour, and within an hour of that, the insights are available. So it's what we term near real time, within 2 hours. We are looking at doing enhancements to be able to bring that window down to an hour. So you upload within an hour, and within sort of 20 minutes, the insights are available, or you start uploading every 30 minutes and it's available within the hour. So that is coming. I did want to throw a spanner in the works here, Rod, is negative sentiment in the emotional sense is valuable, but also negative sentiment in the product or sales process. You know, a client might be complaining about too expensive, irrelevant, incorrect time to call. So, you know, don't just think of negative sentiment being emotional words that are, I'm unhappy, I'm dissatisfied. It is, you are too expensive, your product is not relevant, your product has a bad reputation. So you can also build out sentiment queries around product, around service, around sales, around pricing.
Right. I think that kind of rounds off what we wanted to talk about on sentiment analysis. So high points on it. It's quick. It's easy. We've got built-in both positive and negative sentiment templates in place. We should be running sentiment analysis on all calls, and we should be creating dashboards that allow team leaders, supervisors, or managers to turn around and address these, particularly the negative sentiments, very quickly. I think that's the high level that I get out of this. Thank you so much for that.
And sentiment, to add to that, Rod, is not just emotion-based sentiment. It could be sentiment around the product. It could be sentiment around the offer. And other things, you know, it could be, you could look for profanities, you can build queries to track that, racial slur. So, you know, sentiment has many facets to it, not just emotional. And I think that to me would be the key message, is to take that sentiment queries and think of it in other contexts, around offering, around service, around general interactions. Like slang words is another version of sentiment. So, you know, if slang words are not acceptable, what are the common slang words that are being heard, and how do you flag that so that you can address those?
Excellent. Now, I'm glad you added those pieces to it as well there. Thanks, Corey. Quickly now, we're going to move over to the second question that came in, and I think I'm going to ask Henriette to address it there, which is, we've got quite a few users, Callbi users, in the outbound telesales environment. And as we know, outbound telesales relies on leads, wherever those leads may come from. Some of them are from within the organization, some of them are are acquired through partnerships and alliances, etc. But nonetheless, leads are very expensive, and on the one hand, it costs the organization money, and the other, they have the potential to generate revenue from sales. Henriette, one of your hobby horses is using Callbi to prevent misuse of leads in a telemarketing environment. Can I pass over to you for comment on that?
Yes.
And perhaps if you could demonstrate as well.
Definitely, Rod. I will do. I'm just going to share my screen as well. And I just want to add there, you've mentioned telesales, but it's also collections. It's on any environment where you have a list of people that you need to contact and that you need to work through. Remember, and like you've mentioned, your leads will ultimately determine your success. So if I contact, I need to make sure that I do the right thing with the lead. And it all comes down, and I'm busy sharing my call list. Again, just if you can confirm that you can see the perfect stuff. So when you upload, remember that you can also upload additional data. And I always strongly suggest, if you have it available, add your call outcome as part of your metadata. Your call outcome is where your agent selects after the call. Some areas will call it a wrap code or a disposition code. But add that in, because that is then where the magic starts, where you can start checking what my agent said happened on this lead. Is it actually what happened? Remember that whatever your agent selects will determine what happens with that lead after that call. Now, some suggestions and some ideas, and I'll show you some dashboards. But things, for instance, where the agent selects wrong number. Remember, if the agent selects wrong number, the lead will stop being recycled. So immediately it's a lost opportunity. We don't contact it back. Or something like not interested. And you can go think about all your wrap codes or disposition codes that will stop the lead from being recycled. Now, using that, you can now start thinking about queries that you can write to check for the content of the conversation on that audio recording. And does it correspond to what the agent selected? There's some simple things that's already available. For instance, voicemail. And I just want to show you. With a voicemail, you can build a query that checks, and this is a very short one. There's a much longer one available. But things that checks if it was an actual answering machine that picked up on the other side. A lot of times, agents will select voicemail if it was a difficult conversation or they don't want to speak to the person again. Now, remember, the voicemail will put the lead back, will recycle it, someone else will phone it. So customer rapport is gone, the next person phones, and now they need to start all over again. But writing these queries, and that's what I want to show you. And this list is not yet exhausted. There's many other things to do. But you can now use the logic of checking the conversation and compare it against the disposition. First example here is where the agent said it was a voicemail, but actually the query does not pick up that it was a voicemail. And now you have your list and you can click through and you can go see there was conversations that took place. It's possible that this was actually a successful sale or a callback or something like that. But now we've just placed the lead back into the queue. Where leads are closed, remember, anywhere the agent selects, you can go check if it was a voicemail or a need to contact it back. Here, for instance, right party contact. Anywhere where the agent selected that it was a right party, but there's a very short conversation on there. You can now go check if it actually happened. Remember again, when you do your statistics and your forecasting, you base your conversion on your right party contacts. Now, if you push up your right party contact and you say, I had 100 RPCs, your conversion is going to look lower because now I'm not converting so much. But maybe you did not have so many right party contacts. So that's just the logic of thinking about, what does the disposition say? The agent said it was a dropped call, but there was a long conversation. Or the agent said not interested, but actually no one indicated that they are not interested on that actual conversation. The last one, just looking at callbacks. Did I schedule and ask for a time when a callback was required? or did I close off the actual lead? So there's many other examples that I can obviously share willingly and as you guys check in with me, but that's just the thought of using queries, checking the content of the conversation, and comparing if it was actually what was selected in your disposition code.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Henriette. I'm coming back in there. I think we're coming up for 10:30. Corey, you need to log out at this time, I remember you saying. So thanks for your contributions, and I'll see you in the car, so drive safely. And thanks for your participation today. We really value that.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Corey.
Henriette, you're still with us.
Yes.
We don't have any specific questions in the chat lines at the moment or in the Q&A from anybody. Henriette, just from your side, we won't just belabor the point, but are there any specific questions that are coming up to you in your engagement with Callbi users or customers where there may be some challenges? Anything in particular you'd like to just spend a few moments on?
Right, I think the biggest thing, and maybe this is something we need to think about for our next Coffee with Callbi session, and I think a lot of the people today on the call and any of our people who will be watching the webinar is they will concur. The challenge comes with now you've got your queries, you've got your dashboards. How do I now implement this in my environment? So like I said, in the interest of time, and we can do it as a whole new webinar, but it's about thinking what will fit into your specific environment. There's no one size fits all. It depends on what's important. What do you want to drive? Remember, we've got the goals function. It needs to start with what is it that you want to achieve. From there, set up the system, set up the queries, set up your dashboards. But then the next step is saying, how do I now implement this from a day-to-day operationalized way? So I really think, and on that note, Rod, maybe let's consider doing this as next month's Coffee with Callbi to talk about some tips and tools and practical guidelines of how do you operationalize now that you've got it. I say it a lot. It's beautiful to have it built and your queries are there and your calls get processed and you see these things flagging. But if nobody takes action, if it doesn't come through to your floor, if nobody coaches, then you're just looking at a screen with interesting information on it every day.
Right. And I think this picks up on the discussion we had last month's Coffee with Callbi, which is the role of the analyst,
Yes.
the QA. It's no longer just ticking sheets anymore. And what I've started to see with some of the users is the information has become so valuable. It's no longer just QA. This is business intelligence. This is going through to the operational directors, to the executive team, right into the boardroom. So my message to anybody coming in as a QA analyst, speech analyst, specialist is if you use the information you're getting out of Callbi and present it correctly, your word will be heard in the boardroom. Yes. And of course, that has very powerful effect on career path. Henriette, your quick comment on that before we close.
You're 100% right, Rod. And I'm actually just also thinking about something else that I always also tell everyone is don't think you are first going to build this perfect, most beautiful house before you start using it. Any insights you start gaining is better than no insights. It's a work in progress. Implementing speech, there's many things you'll tweak, there's new things you'll roll out. Start dabbling, testing the water as soon as you get those queries out there. Start sending it. And I see a lot of our clients, they're scared to implement, they're scared to roll out. They first want to get everything perfect. They want to build the whole world. But you're losing out on valuable insights. And this is a work in progress. I always say, how do you eat the elephant? Bit by bit. So start with those bits, get it out there. People will get used to it. Part of change management. It's easier than wanting to implement the whole shebang in one go.
Right. We have a nice question come in from Gerard. What is the roadmap for categories to be added into a scorecard, to be weight instead of queries, to be able to build over an overall scorecard? And the scorecard that you use model, if I remember correctly, it does have a weighting factor. But,
It has it does have a weighting factor. Currently, we do not allow categories or subcategories. So Gerard, I know exactly where the question has come from. We have logged it on the roadmap because we've implemented now categorizing of queries. We've locked it that the team also then looks at being able to add a category onto the scorecard, which would pull in all those related queries, and then you can weight accordingly. Gerard, I cannot tell you right now, I'm going to thumbs suck if I give you an actual timeline. It has been logged. I'll follow up with the guys again. Remember, we work based on prioritization. So it is dependent whatever else is in front of it on the roadmap currently, if the amount of value and the amount of work that it will need. But I will keep you posted.
I think that raises a point, and I think it's a message to everybody on the call today, is we have an amazing team of developers sitting down in Stellenbosch and respond very quickly and very positively where a customer or a user has a valid request for a feature. It's taken very, very seriously. Henriette, you're part of that development team. Won't you comment on that, please?
100% we do. We invite comments, suggestions from all of our users. We've built Callbi thus far based on user feedback and what makes it better. So I always say any suggestion you've got, send it through. The process we work with, and just so you understand, is when we get these feature suggestions, we look at it, I submit it, we discuss it, we sit together every morning, and once a month we can go through the list of all the suggestions. How the prioritization works, remember we've got more than 80 clients. So we will take the feature suggestion. It's based on effort to implement. Obviously, if it's a quick thing to do, we can push it in very easily. Or then based on value for the wider audience. If we see these things and it really makes a lot of sense and it will provide value to a big amount of the audience, it also gets prioritized higher. And that's why I say send the suggestions. There's so many things we've had from clients thus far where we don't always see everything. We don't work in your environment. And sometimes these things come through and I realize, wow, look at this. And it's a quick thing. And within a week, they can implement. So that's how our process works. So please keep it coming. If it can be done quickly or if it's big value to the bigger organization, yes, it will get implemented.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks for that, Henriette. Nice question come in. Unfortunately, I don't have a name. It says anonymous attendee. But it's a great question. The question is, what type of English does Callbi listen to? American English or British English? Pronunciation and enunciations. Lovely question. I think anonymous, but the basic Callbi, the one that we've developed here in South Africa, it's based on South African English and all of our nuances, isiZulu, Sesotho, Setswana, and of course our ability to transcribe and accurately analyze on mixed languages. Then fairly recently, Callbi's entered into a global agreement with an American producer of language libraries called DeepGram. They have over 30 languages, dialects, and accent variants. So, for example, the American version has both the East Coast, West Coast, and the Southern accents. They have a Spanish version, which is American, Mexican Spanish, as well as Spain Spanish. So there are well over 30 accent libraries there. We are now starting to work in Australia, where Callbi's developed its own Australian accent language pack, which is giving us very, very high transcription accuracies as well. We have New Zealand accents libraries, and UK is the big one. So yes, using the DeepGram tools in the UK, we're able to do very accurate transcriptions, believe it or not, even on strong Scottish and Irish accents or Welsh accents. So yes, it's an art and a science which is developing very, very quickly. Henriette, have you got something to add on that?
No, you've said it all. So quick answer is for the local South African and our local clients, it's South African English. And I always say to everybody that is already 11 languages on its own. So it takes the words ish and yay and yeah and all of that. Obviously, the South African English is more based on British, but no, it's not British versus American. It's South African English. And then, like you said, for all the other regions and areas, dependent which language engine gets activated, it could be any one of those.
Okay, thanks. And it's not anonymous. That was Brian and Glorville. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Appreciate it. And then, is that also you, Brian, saying, is there development in terms of monitoring or tracking improvements, a week view with a specific query rather than filters option or extracting the data? So is there anything in development on tracking improvements week on week? Henriette?
Look, so again, and just if I understand the question correctly, you have within the dashboards where you can build, and I usually suggest a line graph where you can track. You can say, show me all the calls that matches a specific query, and you can track the movement on a line graph that will show you day by day, week by week, how it will improve. So if I understand the question correctly, it is already available. From a dashboarding perspective, we are busy, also part of our roadmap, to look at some more options. So where you can start comparing week by week on one card. I do know currently that is one of the limitations. You either see day by day or you see a whole rolled up duration. So week by week, yes, on the roadmap on one card, but it is already available if you draw card for card, comparing the weeks against each other. Right, I'm assuming it was you, so more than happy that we have a chat, and I'll just show you the suggestion that we do the line graph. It's very easy because you can then see today 95% of my calls hit the query. Tomorrow it's 98, and that's how you start tracking that improvement. And we actually suggest that if you start coaching or you roll out an initiative onto the floor, you track it. You have to track it, otherwise you don't know if it's being effective.
Excellent. Well, Henriette, thanks so much for that and for the demos earlier. I don't see any further questions or queries coming from the floor. But as everybody, all of our users know, you're most welcome at any point in time to engage with us if you have specific challenges or ideas or tasks that you want to achieve using Callbi. We consider our users to be part of an exclusive, not exclusive, but a family group, our Callbi users, our power users. So to everybody on the call today, thank you very much for spending time with us. We're making it short and sweet. We're not going to go the full hour today. And specifically, it's thanks to Corey, who's no longer with us today. And Henriette, great once again for your passion and your knowledge and your expertise, sharing it with our users. So last words from you, Henriette?
Nothing much. I'm happy for everybody that joined in. Remember, I'm here. If you've got questions, send it on to me. You've got my details. We're here to field. If you need a demonstration or anything, we're more than happy to help.
Great stuff. So I think that's it for this session. Please log on next month and submit your questions well in advance. That allows us to kind of do some development work and maybe even pull up some screens to elaborate on whatever those questions might be. So once again, thank you very much for attending this session of our Coffee with Callbi, and we look forward to seeing you again next month. First Tuesday of every month, 10 o'clock in the morning. Thank you.
Thanks for
and thanks,
hosting,
Henriette.
Rod. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.